This week on the Communicators, interviews with Matthew Blank, Chairman of Showtime, and Chris Cookson, President of Sony Pictures Technologies. Both interviews were recorded at this year's cable show at the Los Angeles Convention Center.
Matt Blank is the Chairman and CEO of Showtime. He's also the co-chair of the 2010 Cable Convention here in Los Angeles. Let's start with that role, if you don't mind, Mr. Blank. What's the big story for the cable business in 2010?
Well, you know, for us coming here to Los Angeles, we haven't been to Los Angeles until 1996, but it was a really interesting opportunity to talk about the convergence of some really great content, some of the best content you can see on television today, with the expanding distribution capabilities of the cable industry, as well as all the great technology coming out of Silicon Valley, Hudson Valley, and try to bring them together here in Los Angeles. The fact that we haven't been here for so long, I think, was an opportunity to expose a lot of the big content players here in Los Angeles to what we do and all the terrific things that are happening in our businesses.
Well, then let's be specific. What does that convergence mean for Showtime?
Well, you know, we love the changes in technology. First of all, I've always been a believer that you can't stop them, so you better love them. But, you know, we have a model that, you know, people kind of poo-pooed a few years back. Everybody talked about the premium services and single revenue stream. Well, all of a sudden in the past couple of years, when the advertising markets had suffered a bit, fortunately coming back very strongly now, that really wasn't an issue for us. The subscription model continues to work extremely well for us. And we also think that as you look at other screens, the subscription model travels very well. All of a sudden you hear other entities out there talking about subscription models. So we've been in that business for a long time. On the TV everywhere front, all of a sudden authentication has become a buzzword in the industry. There's a cable company is going to authenticate the fact that you are a subscriber, which then allows you to watch the content you get through that cable system on your iPad or your laptop or whatever device or whatever place you choose to be. We kind of giggle at that because premium TV has been authenticated for our entire life. If you ordered Showtime back in 1978, very frequently a cable operator rolled the truck and removed a little filter from the cable drop outside your house, which would allow the Showtime service to pass through the coax into your home. That was the origin of authentication. So we've always been an authenticated service. So we think in many ways our adjustment to how these services are distributed and what's happening are far easier than it will be for others.
So for your model will be pay once and access and whatever?
Maybe, not sure. You may pay once for your cable operator, through your cable operator and get your service everywhere. I think as all these technologies come along, we kind of back up and say a couple of things. One, what's our rights structure? What are we allowed to do with all this great program we've acquired in addition to the programming that we produce? Two, as a new distributor, what's your ability to secure our product and protect it from theft? And three, what's the business model? And obviously the business model is most important. We don't want our programming going places that we cannot benefit from in terms of all the money we invest, particularly in the original programming.
With all the fragmentation that's going on for the individual consumer of content, what is your connection with that person? Is it the Showtime brand, or is it going to be the individual properties that you develop?
Well, I think both. Though certainly the brand in premium TV is more important than almost anywhere in TV we've seen historically. You know, people may watch CSI, they may watch NCIS, they may watch 60 Minutes or the NFL. They're not necessarily watching the brand of CBS. You have to purchase Showtime. You have to purchase it every month to watch Weeds or to watch Dexter or to watch Californication or The Tudors. So there's always been a much closer relationship between how we market our brand, how successful our programming is, and how successful we are as a network in building subscribers and keeping subscribers.
It seems as though in watching Showtime you've made a real conscious decision to ramp up the original content and cut back on the number of movies that you purchase. Here we are in near Hollywood. Can you talk about that strategy and why you're moving in that direction?
Yep. First, we really haven't made a decision to cut back on movies. We'll have as many movies as we used to. We kind of made a decision a couple of years ago that the prices we were paying for movies were too high relative to how they were being consumed today. There was a time in this business where, premium TV, Showtime, and HBO was really the only time you saw an uncut, unedited movie after it was in the theaters. And today, we have so many different things going on in terms of distributing movies, whether it's video on demand, whether it's home video. A week doesn't go by when somebody just like Sony doesn't say, we're going to distribute a movie, in the home video window right to the back of your big screen Sony TV. So I think our approach was that these theatrical movies were not doing the job that they used to do in terms of viewership and in terms of branding the network. And it was critical to have things that we owned and were solely identified with Showtime. We worry that when somebody sees a movie on Showtime after it's in the theaters, they don't know where they're seeing it. There's no reason to expect a consumer to know that film has been so many places. But we do expect our consumers to know where they saw Dexter, and where they saw Weeds, and where they saw The Tudors, and where they saw Nurse Jackie. So we've been this is an effort that has started in the past half dozen years, and has been extremely successful for us. And we have, kind of created our own niche in terms of what type of original programming seems to be working for us. And people know that these are Showtime shows, distinctively Showtime shows.
You and I just came from the opening general session where a couple of key points made I wanted to follow up on with Showtime's experience. First was a comment made that the industry is getting more successful. It used to be putting long-form content into every new media platform, and now learning that different platforms have different ways of being used. What's your experience been like?
Well, I think we're still all early in that game, and we'll see. I mean, you get an HD television and you'll watch anything that's in HD for the first month or so. After that, you're not going to watch a show you don't want to watch just because it's in HD. I think, that same effect takes place as we move through these different sequential distribution cycles with devices. I think that right now they've sold 1 million iPads in the past month. I think anybody who's got an iPad is probably sitting there watching whatever they can on the iPad because it's new and they want to see something that looks great on the iPad. I suspect that, 3 months from now, those people will only be watching the shows that they want to watch on the iPad, the reason they bought the iPad in the first place. So, we take it cautiously. We've learned a lot. We're actually backward integrating. For the first time, we just bought a show called Web Therapy from Lisa Kudrow, who for the past year or so has been doing these little 3-5-minute vignettes. She plays a therapist, and and she created them, and they've been appearing online. We've bought them, and we're going to bundle them together and see if we can make a half hour out of them, and potentially with additional content. And it's hysterical, she's brilliant. If that works, we'll probably say, hey Lisa, let's do this as a half hour like we're used to doing with shows. And that would be interesting because it's not somebody taking a half hour show from Showtime and saying, how's this going to work on someone's mobile device? Or how is it going to work on their iPad? How is it going to work on their laptop? It's us saying this is content that we happen to have seen in a different technological environment, a different user environment, and we think is good enough that it could be linear program that appears on Showtime. So, there'll be a convergence of these things, and if my kids are 25 and 22, they don't know the difference between a broadcast network and a cable network. They know content. They know what they like to watch on Fox, and they know or CBS or ABC, and they know what they like to watch on MTV or Discovery or on Showtime. They don't say, well, that was a broadcast network and this is a cable network. I think that the next generation that comes along really won't distinguish on how that piece of content made its way from a producer to their mobile device. Because in reality, if it's easy getting that content on your mobile device, why should you care? They just want access to that content in an economically viable fashion, in a way it's reproduced that they can see it and they can access it when they want to access it. So, things are moving very quickly, and who knows how fast you'll see us out on all these devices.
Well, as always, it sounds like content remains king, even as all these devices.
I've always believed that, and I hope so. I think that I have shows that I love seeing, and we have shows that we love the fact are so embraced by our subscribers. I want them to have the simplest access possible, and we really saw that, you know, just explosively when we introduced Showtime On Demand. We were one of the first ones out there with an on-demand service a decade or so back, and boy, within no time, you know, we saw huge numbers of those who had access to on-demand using it. They watched more of our original programming. Their average length of tune-in was longer. Their attitudes toward resubscribing were higher. And, you know, lo and behold, it didn't take them long to say, this is how I want to watch this programming. And, you know, the other thing that we learned, that when we gave them that option of viewing it like that, they knew everything that they were watching was on Showtime. Why? Because we put in their hands the opportunity to menu and choose to watch that programming at a specific time. So if they wanted to watch Weeds, they knew they had to go to Showtime on Demand, scroll down to Weeds, pick the episode they wanted to see, and watch it, and click. So there was much less misattribution of our product to others. So that was really great.
Two final questions, different topics. First of all, as a content creator and distributor, are you at all concerned about anything going on in Washington right now?
You know, look, I think that we're always concerned about something. You can't pick and choose the things you would like to happen in a regulatory world, as you know. So I think our approach is always to be the most compelling product out there, so that regardless what happens in a regulatory environment, people want us, people will find a way to access us, and people will speak up about the type of content they want to see and how they want to see it. And hopefully they'll be heard out there.
My last question is about American competitiveness. We're now in this tough economy, maybe just coming out the other end. We also have a president who keeps speaking about people needing to have jobs in the new digital marketplace, communications marketplace. Are American universities graduating the kinds of employees that you need to grow your business in the future?
Well, I think in our case they are. I wouldn't say I'm an expert on this subject, but you sure see a tremendous number of young people going to Silicon Valley, going into the internet world, getting involved entrepreneurially in creating some really interesting services out there. I'm moderating a panel on Thursday which has one of the founders of Twitter on it. You know, these things are happening here, and I think they'll continue to happen here because, you know, we have an economic system that provides the consumers, provides the capital, does provide the technology, and has an awful lot of people with some great ideas. It's a much more competitive environment around the world, and somehow our economy always remains fairly competitive.
Thank you for being on Communicators.
Thank you. It's nice to see you.
Chris Cookson is the president of Sony Pictures Technologies, and for Sony he's also serving as chief officer of their 3D Technology Center. And 3D is the big buzz right now, Mr. Cookson, so tell us a little bit about where this is all going.
Well, where it's all going, hopefully it's going to a place where people will enjoy a lot of 3D materials. I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is that the way we get up in the morning every day and see the world, most of us, is we see in 3D. So 3D as an augmentation or an extra tool in storytelling is something that we think that is going to be interesting to see how filmmakers and other creators use to enhance the stories they tell. And I think people will get more into the stories when they have a chance to see it.
But is the medium-term future for it still special event usage, or do you see it going towards ubiquity?
I think that there are things that you can think of today that you'd like to see in 3D, and so, you know, those are the things that will first come to the screen. I think that we're all interested in seeing basketball, we're all interested in seeing, you know, football and things like that. There are movies, of course, that have been done in 3D, and so those readily translate. I think that there's a different way of telling stories with 3D, and as people explore 3D as a storytelling tool, I think we'll find a lot of things that we may not have thought of as being ready for 3D. We'll find a lot of those things will actually be quite interesting in 3D. So it's kind of an adventure. I'm kind of interested to see where it goes.
How much of an impediment are the glasses required to view it?
Well, you know, people always ask the question.
You brought your glasses, by the way. Do you still have them?
People always ask the question, do you think people will be willing to wear glasses to see 3D? And I can tell you that when I don't wear my glasses, I don't see 3D. So I find it a hard question to figure.
Sure.
I think that all of us are interested in a day when it might not be necessary, but I think that as the glasses evolve and the situation, the systems evolve, that it's really a minor impediment. And most of the people I know really get used to it quite quickly.
What for the non-technology person like myself, 3D was around when I was a little kid, and we went into, I think, to Disney and put on glasses and watched things. And all these years have passed, and now we're talking about it again. Why didn't the development take off at an earlier time?
I think that there are a lot of things that were impediments in the early time. Like in 1953, there were a huge number of movies made in 3D in that era, and the projection systems to get them to the screen were really kind of Rube Goldberg mechanical things. You had to have two projectors running in sync, or you had to have the red-blue glasses, which nobody really ever liked. And so what happened was it became more trouble than it was worth. I think the first time around 3D was created as a reaction to television eroding the theater. And I think that they found that other things, widescreen and more color and things like that, actually were able to do that with a lot less complexity. I think that the big thing that enables it now is the advent of electronic projection, because the projection systems today are absolutely stable, so that the things that interfered so much in the past have kind of fallen away, and now it's just a case of putting it to use and it works.
And now it seems, as a layperson looking at the stage of development, that it's in a sort of a secular challenge, because the cost of production looks very high. You don't have the distribution mechanism. The theater is able to show this. So how do you get it past this infancy stage?
I think that what you're seeing is the announcements that, Sony made announcements back at the Consumer Electronics Show that in partnership with Discovery Channel and with IMAX, we're putting on a channel to bring 3D material to the screen. Excuse me. And then ESPN is doing a large number of events. Just meeting with them yesterday on this, we're planning a tremendous number of events in sports to bring to the home, which I think people will find compelling. And then games. I think if you have a chance to see 3D gaming, you realize that it's a whole different dimension. And one of the things that they've been doing some testing on is kind of interesting, is that on the games where you're doing driving and those sorts of things, that people's scores go through the roof compared to what they did in 2D, because they actually can get into the game more and they can see the depth and they can make better decisions. So it becomes a more compelling experience.
So then the demand will drive all the other
so
things into place.
I think that there will be the early adopter who will be anxious to try these things, but I think a lot of other people will see these things and say, hey, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs or Avatar or whatever really is a good experience, and I'd like to have it again. And you can justify in your mind that I have personal content that I might be able to take, I have games that I could play, I have sports, and I have movies, and maybe it's worthwhile.
Stay with sports production, because you are an award-winning sports producer. So how do you see the additional applications in sports production? Where's it going to go there?
Well, I think that in sports, one of the key things that we've been learning, and the guys at ESPN have been doing a lot of testing on this, is that you tell a story differently in 3D than you do in 2D. The typical coverage that is centered on long lenses from high up doesn't really work in 3D to the same extent that it does in 2D. So you want to be closer to the action, you want to be more involved. But then also, what happens is the way we cut in one angle to another angle to another angle really is a reaction to the fact that we're trying to tell a 3D story in a 2D world. We don't have the ability to tell the depth, so we have to go to a different angle to show the relationships. So I think what's really interesting is the idea that the camera does not cut as much, that the shot develops and you follow it more, because you can actually see so much more in one shot that you don't need 3 shots to tell the same bit of information. So people are, I think, anxious to be learning how to do this. In basketball, if you've seen any of the 3D basketball, watching regular 2D basketball is like being in the bleachers or the skybox. But 3D basketball is like being Jack Nicholson at the Lakers game, because you can be right there and everything looks real right in front of you. So.
And when this moves to the small screen, people are just now buying HD television sets, and we're already moving on to the next generation. What about consumer acceptance for investment in their own technology at home? One question, and also bandwidth competition to bring this amount of content to small screens.
Well, I think that the first thing about the TV sets that do 3D today is they're extensions of the normal high-end TV sets that we have. So if you look at the high-speed sets like the motion flow TV sets that are in the market today that run at 240 pictures per second, those sets have been adapted to give you left eye, right eye, left eye, right eye. So it's not a technological change of a huge step. It's really just growth to the next logical step of applying the TV sets that they've been making. People have more than one TV set, so you might migrate what was your best set last year to your bedroom next year, and so there's an opportunity to get this.
The whole theater experience becomes one where people have different kinds of social gatherings around them.
So,
now on the bandwidth part.
On the bandwidth part, one of the issues for cable, as cable show here, and for satellite as well, is there's tremendous investment in infrastructure that exists. And so one of the things that will roll out when 3D starts is a method of transmitting the picture through the existing infrastructure in a way that doesn't require immediate changing of all the set-top boxes and head ends. So that the bandwidth requirements of 3D at the beginning will be the same. It will be another channel, but it's like justifying any other channel that you bring to the market. Eventually, I think you'll see a migration to a technology where the 3D and the 2D are packed in together, much like Bluray Discs will be when they come to the market. They'll have both the 3D and 2D packed in together. And so the bandwidth there is just slightly greater, but not hugely greater. So it's a question of if people find it worthwhile.
When you mentioned Bluray Disc, let me ask you about learnings of the whole Bluray Disc, when you mentioned that technology. Yes. What were the learnings for the business and the competition between formats there?
Well, I think that everybody has learned it's always better if you can just get on with trying to make one thing work and not spend a lot of time hassling about which one's the best. So, I mean, the fact that there was a delay to get the format established, I think, meant we lost some opportunity. But I think that at the end, it made, because of things that went on within the competition, it made it a stronger format and made it better for consumers and for the studios as well. So, it's one of those mixed blessings. You got to a better place, but it took you longer than you wished.
Now, within Sony, about how you're organized, it's interesting when you read about the structure of Sony United, where all of the divisions are pledging to work together for common benefit. It seems so logical. From your own past experience within other organizations, is this truly something that needs to be said and organized, so that people don't end up siloing again and working against one another as a company?
I think that you go to human nature, and somebody's responsible for something, and they want to make sure that they make it come out the way they think it should come out. So the spirit of teamwork is something that people have to dedicate themselves to. So it doesn't necessarily come naturally in all.
Welcome to the cable show, right?
It doesn't necessarily come naturally to all people or all organizations, but when I joined Sony, one of the things that I was asked to do was to be the bridge between the entertainment company and the technology companies to try and make sure that both sides benefit from what the other side can bring to the table. And I think it's been a great experience because there's an awful lot of cooperation.
So right now, as you look at the next 2-3 years, what are you most excited about?
Well, I'd like to get 3D launched. I think that from the standpoint of things that we're talking about here is the real advent of real broadband in the U.S. I mean, we're kind of behind much of the rest of the world in what we have in the way of high-speed data networks. So when you go to Korea or you go to Japan, they see greater data bandwidth. The rollout in the U.S. is coming, but at the present situation, we don't really realize the possibilities. It'll be interesting as cable increases, to DOCSIS 3.0 and some of the other things that happen, to see the kinds of new services and new opportunities that come to the market. Because from our point of view at the studio, we basically just want to make sure the movie that we made or the TV show we made is out there available, and sooner or later you have to break down and watch it.
Can you explain in closing why we're behind when there's so much capital in this country?
Well, I think we're behind because in many other parts of the world, it's kind of like the way the U.S. used to be. When there was, one AT&T is a regulated monopoly that got a guaranteed return on its capital. The incentive was to spend as much capital as you could to get as much of a return as you could. as we've gone into a different motivation with the current structure where competition is on price and then you need to justify every expenditure. So I think that being fragmented as we are in the U.S., it's slowed us down a bit. We get to the same place ultimately, but it's, you know, different priority was placed in the market in the U.S. than it was in other places where maybe it was seen as a national imperative.
Well, the future is certainly interesting here, watching all the different directions people are going as we're on the precipice of these big changes. But thank you very much for giving us your perspective from Sony.
Okay,
Thanks, Chris.
If you're interested in viewing these or other interviews from the cable show, go to our Communicators website at cspan.org.